Uh, our sponsors for this meeting, the food is sponsored by LastCon. Yay. And facilities here by National Instruments. Chapter leadership, I'm Tiana Chandler, the chapter leader. I did announce the last time that my 2-year term was up, but through we are coordinating how we're going to have positions for this year, so I'm taking it on for 1 more year. And so we have others listed here. If you have any questions, just reach out to them. Raise of hands of who all is currently on our board, so you can see who they are. CPEs for this meeting. Currently, we're still trying to figure out a best way of handling this, but for now, what we've done in the past year was just, if you need to have a CPE certificate, just email me and I can get one to you. We would like to see about having this to be an automated process, so we're still working on that. Supporting OWASP, there's several ways. If you would like to volunteer, if you want to get involved with the leadership, you could talk to one of us on the leadership team, because as we do have coordinators, but we also need additional people to help out with other activities and efforts. Speaker opportunities for meetings such as these, and just get involved in any other local events that we may be helping coordinate. Also, if you shop with Amazon, if you use the Amazon Smile, you could select OWASP as an organization, and a portion of your purchase goes towards OWASP. And we are a 501c3 organization, so anything that you do within the donations and such would go towards that. OWASP membership, we have several memberships that opportunities for individual members, corporate membership, and then if you're a student, there is a student membership. You can go to the OWASP.org site and get more information on that. And Paul Griffiths, he is now our membership coordinator, so Griff, you can raise your hand. And if you have any questions, you can talk to him. We have a study group that's ongoing, and we just finished up 1 book, but now we're getting ready this week to start a new one, Attacking Network Protocols. So Matt Pardo is coordinating that as our education coordinator. Matt, where are you? Right there. Did you have anything else to say about the study group itself?
So like she said, we'll be starting this book on Thursday. We also have a Wednesday study group that meets every other Wednesday. Currently, we're finishing up the Web Application Hacker's Handbook. We'll be doing our last chapter actually this Wednesday and picking a new topic. So if you want to get involved, and that meets on Wednesday night, usually from 6 to 8 or so. That's another group. Can I go ahead and announce the, okay, so I'm trying to coordinate some training, and I have a couple trainers who are interested in doing some trainings for the chapter. The first one will probably be in April. I have if I could get a show of hands, would you guys be interested more in PowerShell or web application pen testing? So if it's PowerShell, raise your hand. Okay. And then web application pen testing. Okay, looks like we'll try to do PowerShell first, and then followed by pen test, web application pen testing. The other thing I want to, can I quickly announce? The other thing I want to announce is B-Sides Austin. I'm one of the coordinators. The CFP's open, so we're looking for speakers, sponsors, and attendees. It sells out every year. It is the largest Texas security conference, and it's local. So please sign up and come enjoy it.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, sorry, hold on just a second.
And I should have thought of that. It is March 8th and 9th, and it's going to be at the same location last year, which was what is that? The Pickle, JJ Pickle Center. So same place, same location, same price, and yeah, we'll have about 600 people there.
Okay, thanks. While I'm on this slide also, the Awesome Security Professionals Happy Hour. We did not have one this month, and we're unsure of next month as well because our typical place we had at Sherlock's Baker Street Pub has closed down. And so we're trying to find a new venue. So just stay tuned for that. We'll announce it on the OWASP Boston list. It's more, well, we do have, we're looking for sponsors, but it's more about the location that we need to settle on. Yeah, so we're working on that. Also, LastCon 2018, save the date, October 25th and 26th of this year. We do have early bird tickets available, and our call for presentations should be open very soon. And Bankim, our conference coordinator, do you have anything else you would like to add to that?
As Tiana mentioned, LastCon is a conference, our chapters conference at the end of the year in October. We have a great series of talks. We're going to be doing more things throughout the year with LastCon and kind of sharing some of our previous content library back to the community. So look out for that, and we'll continue to have that. Also, if anybody's interested in volunteering, come talk to me afterwards. We do have some additional things for volunteers that we're going to be looking at.
Thank you, Bankim. Other upcoming local events, just have some listed here. And just note that ISSA does have a calendar that we typically that has a really good listing of all the different events, so you can also check out their calendar as well. Is there anybody that wanted to say anything about any other events that are coming up?
Hi, I'm Larry Moore. I'm the president of the ISSA chapter. Our January chapter meeting was canceled due to weather, as you probably know. The next one will be the third Tuesday of February. Vern Williams is teaching a class on preparing an incident response team. January was supposed to be scheduled just for the morning. He's working on an afternoon one, so it'll be the same. If it works out, we'll have the same class, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. The morning class is sold out, but the afternoon class will be available once it opens. It's $25 to attend.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. At this point, I'd like to open up to any job opportunities. If anybody has any, their company has any job openings, if they want to make an announcement.
Denim Group is looking for a senior information security consultant. So if you want to come see me afterwards, let me know. My name is Vanny.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Carla Kroll. Dual Security is looking for application security engineers in other areas of product marketing and product management and management and so on. So we are hiring. If you need anything, let me know.
I'm Nate. I'm with Indeed. We're currently looking for senior application security, a infrastructure security manager, most all roles across defensive and a little bit of purple team security. So if you have any interest there, come talk to me.
I'm Dan with Whole Foods Market. We have an opening for a technology audit manager right now.
All right. If nobody else, I just want to quick mention a buddy reached out from HomeAway, and they're hiring a manager of security operations as well.
Okay, and with that, I'd like to now present our CryptoParty with Josh Sokol coordinating, and we have several presenters as well.
Hey, everybody. So, real quick while I get this slide switched over. Okay, so I see a lot of new faces here. Raise your hand if you're new to OWASP. Awesome. We've got a lot of new people. Good job. So the whole idea behind this crypto party is to introduce all these new people to security, to privacy, and to do it at a level that hopefully everybody's able to understand. So we start with basic things, and hopefully we give you something, at least something little, that you guys can take away from here and go and use in your daily lives. And so I'm not speaking today, but I'm talking a little bit. I want to do a quick intro so that you guys understand what the talks that we have today are about. So CryptoParties is a grassroots, it's a global effort to introduce the basics of practical cryptography to the general public. So it might include things like Tor, the onion router, where you're able to route traffic anonymously through the internet. Or we actually do have a talk today on PGP, pretty good privacy, where you learn how to encrypt data and how to send sensitive or confidential data in a secure manner. Or full disk encryption, where you're able to keep the contents of your hard drive safe from prying eyes. Or VPN, where you keep your network data safe from prying eyes. The history of CryptoParties is pretty dense, but they're actually not that old. The idea was conceived by this Australian dude back in 2012, and he just started having some casual Twitter conversations with a bunch of security experts because of a law that was passed in Australia that he was really pissed off about. And he was like, well, I'm really pissed off about these guys spying on my privacy, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to start this group that's going to meet and talk about how do we get so that the government can't spy on us. That's how the crypto parties were found. Now the interesting thing, and I didn't actually hear about crypto parties until Edward Snowden actually had a crypto party, and Wired ran an article back in May of 2014 saying, hey, Snowden, this guy who just leaked a bunch of classified information, held this crypto party at a small hackerspace in Honolulu. And ironically, the thing that he talked about was encrypting your hard drive. He talked about how do you keep this data, in his case, a bunch of data that he stole from the U.S. government, safe from prying eyes, right? So that's some background there. So why CryptoParty? I really like Glenn Greenwald, and I think this is the third or fourth crypto party that we've done for OWASP Austin. We skipped last year, but the year before that, I actually showed a video from Glenn Greenwald. And if you like TED Talk, his TED Talk is amazing. He talks about privacy and just all sorts of different facets of it. And I pulled one quote out because I think it's kind of key to this discussion. Glenn said, ultimately, the reason privacy is so vital is it's the realm in which we can do all the things that are valuable as human beings. It's the place that uniquely enables us to explore our limits, to test boundaries, to engage in novel and creative ways of thinking and being. It's our privacy that allows us to think outside the box. And so with the crypto party today, we're talking about things that give us that privacy, that ability to share things that we have in common with other people that we have in common, and to generally keep our data safe. So with that, our agenda for today, we've got 5 talks for you guys. Each talk is 10 minutes long. If they go over 10 minutes, I'm going to get the cane, pull them off stage. No, we won't do that. But this is the agenda. So to start with, we got Bankim. Bankim's going to come out, and he's going to talk to us about secure communication and data sharing with PGP. So give him a hand, please.
All right, clock's on. Gotta keep it to 10 minutes. All right. So quick show of hands, who has used PGP or GPG? All right, so, and who hasn't? All right, that's good. So this is kind of an intro talk, and I think for those of you who haven't used it before, I hope that this makes it less scary for you and that you will go do it. And if there's time at the end of the session, there'll be people around that can do key signing and key sharing for you. So I'm going to go through a few things, a quick refresher on encryption, PGP, how we use it, but more interestingly, how we can use it for other things beyond just secure email. So encryption's been around forever, and Julius Caesar was known for using it, and kind of was the origin of the Caesarian cipher, which we now think of as ROT13. And that was a very basic transposition algorithm to send communications from the battlefield back to Rome and vice versa. Throughout history, war has driven the need for secure communications, and the kind of coolest example of that is the Enigma machine. There's several versions of it in these images, which was used by the Germans and was part of the work that Alan Turing and others did in Bletchley Park to break this encryption model in order to help the Allies win World War II. There are a couple basic concepts of encryption that we want to talk through, just so you have an idea of what they are and how they're relative to this. Symmetric encryption is where we have a private key that, and its benefit is it's fast and efficient, but the key is what's shared amongst the parties that use that data. So if you want to encrypt something, you encrypt it, you send it separately, but everybody who receives or encrypts or decrypts the data has the same key, which means that how you protect that key requires every single person who has access to that key to follow the same practices. If one person slips up, everybody has to change their key, which is a huge amount of work, as Intel very well knows from their Blu-ray encryption, where they leaked the private key, and all the Blu-ray discs were able to be decrypted. Asymmetric encryption is where we have a key pair. There's a private key and a public key. I won't go into the math, and Karen will correct me anyway if I got it wrong. But mathematically, this key pair allows for you to keep one key secret. So in this example, Alice can receive data from Bob. Bob is going to use Alice's public key, and Bob is now assured that Alice is the only person, or really Alice's private key is the only key in the world that can decrypt this data. And so the only piece of secrecy and control that matters is that Alice protects her private key. The public key is something that anybody in the world can see, and so anybody who wants to send Alice a message can use that public key to send Alice a secret message, and only Alice will be able to receive it and to decrypt that message. So this is a fundamental property of asymmetric encryption and the underlying principle of PGP that we're talking through. Now the opposite is also true. Because of this property, Alice can encrypt something with her private key and sign it, and others can validate that only she could have made this message. And so that leverages a hashing function to take care of that. And so that's the other kind of core encryption technology that we're leveraging here. Hashing, and you think of the most common of these are MD5, SHA, SHA-1, SHA-256. There are others. Our best thought of is checksums. And a hash function is something that will take any size of data, any volume of data, and break it down into a short digest. But that is unique such that if you change one value in the source material, the digest will change significantly. So where this is really powerful is in integrity, like file integrity or message integrity. What it's not useful for is confidentiality. So you can't use a hashing function to protect anything because the mathematics of it are such that the same data put into the same hash function will always give you the same result. So if somebody can guess the data, they can guess the checksum, which is where rainbow tables and other techniques for breaking passwords come from. So why would we want to use some of these encryption technologies, and we'll talk about PGP in specific, to protect your data? Well, there's data privacy laws, and soon, later this year, any company that does business in Europe and that will be affected by the new General Data Protection Regulation, and violating user privacy can come with fines up to 4% of global revenue. So that's a pretty serious incentive to protect your users' privacy and to think about how you're going to protect data throughout your enterprise, whether it's employee data, customer data, and so forth. Other regulations like SOX require you to protect the data for your financial statements if you're a public company or you work with public companies. And likewise, it's our data too. We want to protect that as well. PGP is an open encryption protocol. It was turned into a commercial company, so you can buy a licensed version, but there's also free versions of PGP through GNU-PG or GPG. It's free. Kind of the most interesting story about it is it survived a lawsuit by the government to take it down, and as part of that, they printed the algorithm on T-shirts because it's freedom of speech. So as part of that lawsuit, you can read about it. It's really fun and interesting, but they got around it by printing it on T-shirts. PGP leverages asymmetric cryptography, which is a public and private key pair, and hash-based signatures, as well as using public key repositories and a web of trust to give you assurance about the public key that you're downloading. The basic process is this. When you want to send somebody a message, you take the receiver's public key and you encrypt that file with the message. And then you take your private key and you sign the file with your message. And so this combination of the signed and encrypted content is something that you can then share to anyone you want to. Right? You can share it to anyone. The only person that can decrypt it is the receiver that has the private key pair for that public key. When they receive the message, they can decrypt it using their private key, and they can also validate that the message came from you using your public key. So this allows you to have non-repudiation both ways in that transaction, which is really important. The example here is email. I'm going to talk a little bit about some other examples for how you can use this that are much more powerful than just email or secure messaging. Now, I want to kind of make it a little bit easier. This sounds like a lot of steps to do this, but it's really easy. GNU-PG has fantastic tools out there. For the Mac, it's super integrated. There's free versions for Windows as well. And with it, there's step-by-step processes to generate your key, download, and easy, one-click options to sign in, encrypt, and share. So while this sounds complicated, it's super, super easy to use. The other aspect of this is the web of trust. By using and signing public keys, and Nate's going to talk about some of this a little bit later, you can now create a web of trust because I trust Josh, I've trusted his key and signed it with mine, he's trusted mine, so other people can see this and see that we have a trust relationship, and we can build on that through a network of trust of other people that we are connected to. Had to throw in some XKCD. The lesson there is, be careful who you sign the public key for with people you trust. So that the interesting place where this is really neat, and where I think we as an industry have not done enough or can do more with things like PGP, which is off-the-shelf technology, is how we use it with data in places besides just email. Right? Most people think of PGP for secure email, but you can actually leverage PGP in a really effective way in your data pipeline. As you share data from one system to another, as you drop data or reports or databases or files of large data sets into things like S3 or Dropbox, or sharing that data with other partners, PGP provides you an excellent mechanism to secure that data, not only against direct access, but also assuring you that only the people you've authorized to see that data are the ones who can decrypt it, regardless of where that goes throughout your data pipeline. Who today knows everywhere where user data goes in your enterprise? So we don't. We can't control that. And so the best mechanism is to ensure that only the right people can access it. And that's a really strong mechanism. Other places you can use it are for things like log protection and integrity, evidence chain, as Josh mentioned, disk images, as Snowden did, and so forth. That's it.
All right, no time for questions, but everybody give it up for Bankim. Awesome. We will keep this show rolling here. Which one is it? All right, so up next, everybody give it up for Dave Sanford. He's going to talk about decentralized IDs and verifiable claims.
Okay, 10 minutes, 10 slides. I think I'm going to have to move fairly quickly, so clarifying questions at the end if we have time. So why talk about these paired standards, decentralized identifiers and verifiable claims as part of a crypto party? And the simple answer is this is very much in the spirit of John Perry Barlow's ideas in terms of democratizing the internet. So my introduction to this stuff is from the Internet Identity Workshop, which is a forum I go to California twice a year. And that's where these things were born and uses pretty much all of the technologies that Bankim was talking about. Not necessarily TTP specifically, but asymmetric encryption and the like. So the current or maybe old model is, I guess if you have Active Directory in your organization, you're both the identity provider and the service provider for your organization. But the basic model is that, let's say you're using OWASP, Google can be the identity provider, and someone else is providing a service is the service provider. The key thing is that the terminology is claims or assertions or pretty much any parameter, including passwords, that are associated with an individual. So that's the basics on that. And you know, people originally believed when they created OWASP that they were creating a more user-centric world, and it's possibly true, but now we just, instead of our companies, we have Google and Facebook and the like, who are now the holders of our accounts. So the concept is self-sovereign identity, where you, the individual, are the identity provider. And Josh, so slides are available, I don't know. Okay, so I have some links in here. Everybody who's interested in this should go read the reference there. Christopher Allen's one of the authors of SSL, and he started a number of seminars called Rebooting the Web of Trust. And so some of this material came out of there. But the bottom line is that he posed 10 principles of self-sovereign identity. User's existence, as opposed to, say, bots. Identity control, the user controls their identity. Access to their own data, transparent systems and algorithms. Persistent identities are possible. Interoperability, user consent to the use of their identity. Minimize disclosure of claims, and user rights protected. So those are all laudable goals, somewhat idealistic, but we'll see. Now, just minor basics on blockchain. Much of the self-sovereign identity technology depends on using a blockchain, one of multiple blockchains. So everybody should know at least about blockchain that it basically provides immutable data. any data that's written at any time to the blockchain can't be questioned as having been written there later, as long as the public blockchain and all that. You can change it. You can write something later that says that, you know, if it's a parameter, you can change the parameter, but that's a new entry onto the blockchain. So it's an immutable record. And also there's the ability to do blockchain receipts, which provide proof that data is what it was stated at a specific time. So W3C has a standard out there very early for decentralized identifiers, DIDs. There are some DIDs out there or decentralized identifiers that don't conform to the W3 spec, but if you conform to the W3 spec, basically what you get is interoperability. So that claims issuers can issue claims to DIDs regardless of what blockchain or format is used to define the DID. So, what do I mean when I say claim issuers? Okay, so there's another W3 standard on verifiable claims. And the model that we're talking about is basically, and this is a little bit of a paradigm shift from the current identity, right? So in this model, DMV becomes issues verifiable claims about you, including your driver's license itself, and university degrees, government issue passports. All of these things are verifiable claims. So there are lots of examples of institutions that instead of co-managing a password with you on your account, simply issue verifiable claims for any state change, including what we now think of as account creation. And the diagram on the right shows a user requesting a credential, saving and storing a credential, querying a credential repository. And you wouldn't need to necessarily have a credential repository, but you could. So just to show that this is not purely conceptual, you can code all of this stuff in JSON. A specific W3C compliant DID format specifies the format. For example, one of the most popular Ethereum one is called UPort, and a primary ID. And then you can add lots of other data, including authentication methods and other stuff, into the DID format. And similarly, verifiable claims, basically, JSON LD is JSON link data, but that's a longer conversation. But verifiable claims, so basically the issuer is going to take some claim about you. They're going to take your DID, which they can publicly find, or you've given it to them or whatever, and they're going to put at least one information along with that, and then they're going to sign it and send it off to you, and now you have that information, and you can prove that they made that claim about you. So there are lots of issues. A lot of the standard PKI issues, proving ownership of public keys, or non-repudiation, timestamps, key insignia expiration, and all that stuff is still something that are being actively worked in this space. But what's different is the ability to use the blockchain to prove the ownership of your DID, because you have a private key associated with your DID. Nobody else owns that. There's a public key associated with your DID. And claims themselves, you can prove them as well on the blockchain. So, so there's a lot of issues. Obviously, if this takes hold, you'd want to have very public DIDs associated with your real legal name for government IDs and the like. But you could create pseudonymous DIDs that you would use for whatever you want and not necessarily reveal who you are. So, So how's that being used today? Uport and Consenter on Ethereum. Bitcoin IDs conform to W3 spec, C-spec, and there are others. Sovereign Trust Foundation framework is starting to build this out. IBM and other technology companies are building out tools and utilities. There's a lot of interest in this, particularly with the UN for their ID 2020 project, as well as a number of refugee projects. Because if you think of it, you might have, 1 minute? Okay. Yeah, you might have, well, think of somebody from Syria washing up on the shores of Italy. And basically, they don't have any documents. And so once they have a DID, which they can access via website or their phone, then the Red Crescent or Red Cross workers can at least say, okay, this guy we've shown to not have any communicable diseases, and that's a verifiable claim, and that's associated with their DID. And it moves on from there. People will begin to, build their history over time. So there's a lot of interest in that, in those areas, as well as there are pilot projects for, well, there's a pilot project that wants to give DIDs to all Canadian systems, and there's also a pilot project for Illinois. So that's what I got. Thanks.
Give it up for Dave. All right, we're going to keep this party rolling. Up next, we got Michael Marotta talking about Charles Babbage Codebreaker.
Thank you. I believe so. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Thanks to Josh, and thanks to Tiana, and to Griff, one of my favorite people. Okay, good. And all of you. We had the Austin Information Security launch last month, and it came out that we have like 14 different computer security groups here in Austin. This is my favorite. Everybody knows about InfraGard and the FBI. Not many people knew about As Is International, one of my favorite groups. But this is number one for me, both intellectually and emotionally. Laurel and I just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary last month. Also, I apologize, but I followed the format and it insisted on an About Me slide. In addition to being a technical writer and working on a wide range of IT projects, I'm a member of the Texas State Guard in the Maritime Regiment. We are under the command of the same Adjutant General who commands the Texas Army National Guard and the Texas Air National Guard. The difference is that we are not issued weapons and we cannot be sent overseas. We answer to the governor, not to the president. I'm an operator and a trainer in Web EOC, the Virtual Emergency Operations Center. I encourage you all to find out about the Texas State Guard. I became a technical writer in part because of this book. I wrote the code book all about unbreakable codes and how to use them under contract. I was working as a computer programmer on a database management project at General Motors, and nobody wanted to write the user manual. Having written that book and about a dozen magazine articles, I did the user manual, and one thing led to another, and here I am as a technical writer. The book is shelved at UT, and that's the call number there. This is about Charles Babbage. And we all know Babbage and his difference engine. There are few names in the history of computing that stand out, as do Babbage and his difference engine. It was only a demonstration model in his lifetime. Larger models, working models, have been built by museums from his plans. He also proposed a more complex analytical engine, but again, never built in his time, though built by museums in our time. And you may know about his work with Lady Ada Augusta Lovelace, the daughter of George Gordon, Lord Byron, arguably the first computer programmer. What you may not know is that among Babbage's many hobbies were cryptology and lockpicking. He said that lockpicking and cryptology were similar pursuits intellectually. One difference is that, as we will see, though he was a brilliant code breaker, he did not enjoy the task. He enjoyed lockpicking. He found code breaking to be unrewarding. At this time, and we're talking the middle third of the 19th century, say 1823 to 1868, codes and ciphers were all the rage. In America, Edgar Allan Poe's The Gold Bug laid bare for public consumption the means for breaking any monoalphabetic cipher. Newspapers ran columns, misery columns. These were lonely hearts messages by which lovers set up rendezvous. And they typically relied on some kind of encryption, most often a single alphabetic substitution, sometimes a transposition. And this is where Babbage comes in. And there is some mystery about where he comes in. The polyalphabetic cipher goes back to the late Renaissance. We call them Vigenère ciphers, but the first publication can be attributed to Gian Battista Balasso. In fact, the means of breaking monoalphabetic ciphers also goes back to this time, but it tended to be a closely held secret known only to the black chambers of governments. This is the Vigenère table for English, a 26 by 26 character grid. For German, with its umlauts, you'd have 29 by 29. For Greek, 24 by 24. You encipher your message down the rows. The 13th letter becomes encrypted against the 13th row, and so on. So for that Lonely Hearts column, I love you, marry me, enciphered this way against the 13 by 26 table, would look like this. And printed out, it looks like that. And the important thing here is that you'll notice that the two E's are enciphered differently. The two consecutive R's in Mary are enciphered differently. This makes it difficult for the codebreaker. In fact, for 300 years, the Vigenère cipher was called the indecipherable cipher. Les chiffres indeciphérables. I hate French. And there was a war on. The Crimean War saw the United Kingdom, France, and the Ottoman Empire allied against Russia. And the Vigenère cipher was the code of the day. Okay. Babbage. First of all, Babbage promised, but never published, his treatise on cryptanalysis. This was unusual because Babbage had an ego big enough to fill this room. He took on the Royal Society, for one thing. Babbage was one of a handful of liberal scientists who purposely and purposefully restructured their society. Among them were Herbert Spencer, the economist Richard Jones, William Herschel, Charles Darwin, and William Whewell. Whewell coined the word scientist during an ad hoc debate with the poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge at the first meeting of the British Association for the Advancement of Science, June 24, 1833. One difference between the British Association for the Advancement of Science, which was open to the public and open to women, is that it was indeed open to everybody, whereas the Royal Society was a closed meeting. Several scholars today theorize that as a result of this intellectual ferment, that Babbage was working for the War Department. He did publish some insights, and in his autobiography, which was published in 1864, he let out some information, some insights into how he broke the Vigenère cipher, but he never let the cat out of the bag. This quote, by the way, is not from Babbage. It was tossed out at a meeting of DEF CON 512 before that became AHA, but it was Babbage's method. He created a massive set of dictionaries for the English language, organized by word length and sorted by initial letters, and then printed up by their second letters. He made tables of common digraphs and trigraphs. He listed all of the words with repeated letters. He could do all of this work because he was independently wealthy, having inherited from his father an estate estimated at 100,000 pounds. Think of it today in our money as $50 million. This all just prepared his mind to attack the Vigenère cipher. Like all code breakers, Babbage attacked the human element. We say in hacking that amateurs attack systems, professionals target people. Babbage's study of language and cryptography opened the door. And again, we do not know for sure just what door that was because he kept it secret. But he did mention it in passing in his autobiography. And as big as his ego was, he was a man of his word. He meant what he said, and he proved it with mathematics. In fact, Charles Babbage held the same Lucasian chair at Cambridge as was held by Sir Isaac Newton. This is the way the Vigenère worked in practice. Each agent, each minister, each user would be given a word, a keyword, preferably a long word, and ideally one with no repeating letters. Remember in the example above, the keyword here was unpredictably. The message was, I love you, marry me, so we have 13 different ciphers. However, the longer the message, the more likely it is that you will cycle through and eventually recipher using the same key on the same words, certainly on the same letters. Babbage figured out that you do not even need to know the key if you can figure out the length of the key. Now, this is a public document. It's Federal Con Plan 3501 for emergency management. It runs 500 pages. The Texas plan runs 300 pages. Given enough material to work with, the cryptanalyst can unravel the cipher. Babbage had a lifelong interest in cryptology and cryptanalysis. He and his friends, William Whewell and William Herschel, among other savants of the day, all dabbled in it. Babbage and his nephew exchanged challenges. They offered each other small Vigenère ciphers, which Charles Babbage deconstructed, knowing that his nephew began with Dear Uncle and closed with Nephew Henry. He found the keyword Somerset as the code. Babbage later took apart another small Vigenère cipher that a dentist, John Thwaites, had attempted to get patented in 1854, right after the start of the Crimean War. Unfortunately, again, all we have is these tantalizing scraps from Babbage's personal notes. I read through about a dozen books, 14 in all, and this was the best one. It's a good overview, it's well written, it's recent, and gives you a real feel for the time and the place. Okay? So in conclusion, thanks again. Thanks to Josh, Tiana, my long-suffering wife, who knows that the reason I'm a technical writer and not a computer programmer is that I lack her intuitive understanding of computers. Thank you.
Awesome. That was really interesting, Michael. Thank you for that. All right. So up next, we're going to keep the party rolling with David Vosh. He is going to tell us about zero-knowledge proof for bet anonymity.
Thanks, Josh. So most of you might be familiar with the term zero-knowledge proofs, and well, the most basic use that we use in our day-to-day lives is password hashes, right? The server hopefully has zero knowledge of your actual clear text password. It just stores a hash of it, and you can prove to the server that you are who you are by entering the password, hashing it, and the server comparing it. Well, my topic is a bit sillier than that. I was looking for real-world use cases for it, and one of it is, which I just recently came across with some of my colleagues. I saw a little post-it note on a cubicle, and it had different dates on it next to names, and it read something like Elise 2018 February, Bob 2018 May, Cecilia 2018 October. And the bet was, it was actually a bet, as I later found out, when will Jane break up with her boyfriend? That's a pretty, I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with the methods used here. And by the way, I altered the names if you couldn't tell. So yeah, Jane was like, guys, I mean right here, yeah. And I was like, all right, I would like to make a bet as well, and this is my bet, which you can read up there. So what is that? Well, the problem with full knowledge betting is that you're letting everyone know what you're betting for. So this could introduce problems, especially with the order of the betting. So if Bob and Cecilia work together, they can really box in Elise's bet so that she would essentially technically never win, almost, I mean, probabilistically. So if Elise bet like February 27th, then Bob can, bet March 1st, and then Cecilia can bet February 26th. So that way, sort of Elise is, boxed in by a margin of a day. And I just realized that February has 28 days, not 27. So it's not 1 day apart, but 2 day apart. But apart from that mistake, that's one of the problems. The other problem is that dirty play is more likely. I would be able to tell Jane that, hey, you should sort of break up your boyfriend within my time frame, and we'll, split the winnings. Well, my solution doesn't really address the second issue, but it sort of addresses the first one. So the way you can make anonymous bets is via the methods that were introduced by the wonderful presenters before me, is you use one-way encryption, and whenever you're making the bet, you just share the hash that came out of your cryptography algorithm, and you keep the data that you hashed private, which is sort of your private key. So that way you can prove later on that, yes, indeed, I had made this bet, but without letting anyone know that what your bet is until the bet is still ongoing. So in this case, I used SHA 256, and I just hashed, I think Jane will end up marrying her boyfriend. So that's the ultimate, I mean, that means sort of the bet does never end. But anyway, that's not the problem at hand right now. But yeah, so like you can see, if everyone just hashed their bets, and you have to make sure it's not just a date, because date would be 6 characters or 8 characters. That's pretty short, and it's very easily brute forceable with even the most complex hashing algorithms. So if you write like an entire sentence, that's sort of pretty impossible to hash at that point. So that would be the easiest thing to do. And of course, after the bet is ended, you can share your bet with everyone, or everyone can share their bet, and everyone else can verify that, yes, indeed, that was your bet, so you were not changing your bet later, right? Because you could just go in there, tear off that post-it from the wall, and put another one up. And if everyone's bet is, commonly shared, then you can just alter your own, and yes, I won. So yeah, that reduces the risk for dirty play. So that's pretty much the extent of my presentation. Any questions? Follow-up to that would be betting using smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain if you want to complicate things even more. But that would require a bit more setup than just entering a private key into an SHA 256 online hashing tool.
No questions?
There's a question right there.
Claire.
Thank you, David. That was excellent. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I have to admit first that I've been a big fan of zero-knowledge proofs for a long time, and there's something called ZK snarks, which is an effort to make zero-knowledge proofs faster and more efficient. If you have any comments on that, I'd be interested, or we can talk later. It might be embarrassing because it's sort of an esoteric, but the way it's implemented now with zero-knowledge proofs, it can take many cycles. So if you have any comments about that, I'd be interested.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is sort of a silly example, and it's not technically the full extent of zero-knowledge proofs. That if you want to read more on it, you can go to Wikipedia or any of the numerous amazing websites. But yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Any others?
Yeah, I had a line that I didn't expound on, but the decentralized ID stuff, you can use zero-knowledge proofs for a lot of privacy-enhancing stuff in that space, right stuff, the blockchain and all that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, give it up one more time for David. Good job. All right. So it's nice that David left us with a little bit more time because we got Nate. And Nate decided to be difficult. He's going to run his own computer. We're going to try and get him tied in here. Were you able to connect to go to? Maybe. Are you in go to? Technical difficulties. Please stand by. Is there any more food at the back? Yeah. So if you guys are hungry, there's a little bit more food. All right. So unfortunately, we're going to have to end the webinar for this part, or I guess we can have him have audio for it. But we're not going to be able to have the video part of Nate's presentation. But what we will, for everybody who's in the room, we'll have it up on the screen. So just. The main reason I'm doing it off my computer is so I can do a demo with timeline instead. Are you plugged in? This will be fun. Kind of weird holding two mics, by the way. So for all those who are new here, by the way, OWASP, all of our meetings are free. It's open to the public. You guys can come here. We do them at National Instruments the last Tuesday of every month. This one, you'll notice, is not the last Tuesday. We actually had a conflict with the room, so we're doing it now instead. But thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you guys will come back for the next OWASP meeting. We have a mailing list that you absolutely should get on because Tiana sends out reminders about when meetings are, when happy hours are, and all that fun stuff. OWASP is really good for the educational piece of it, learning about things like cryptography, but it's also a really good networking organization as well. We do monthly happy hours, we do the monthly meetings, we do regular study groups every single week, we have an annual conference. So while B-Sides may now be the biggest security conference in Austin, LastCon is by far the best. Sorry, Matt. We're the only conference that has a mechanical bull. We've been going on since 2010, so we've got the experience behind us. Not to slam on B-Sides, it's an amazing conference. Hopefully you all get to attend. If you haven't already registered for B-Sides, by the way, you should absolutely do that. It will fill up if it hasn't already, right? We're pretty close. Okay, so no walk-ins. Yeah, they don't want your cash. Or at least they only want your credit card number. You got it fixed? More or less? I'm stalling, man. You like it? All right, here you go.
Whatever.
Nate
All
Sanders,
right,
everybody.
here we go. Keybase overview. So this is great because it comes off the first talk, which was wonderful, beautiful, and is going to prove my point very, very well. So who am I? Nate Sanders, security guide indeed, otherwise hacker, mobhead, DEFCON goon, troublemaker. I didn't get to finish my slides, so please enjoy the unfinished slides that are going to be presented throughout the talk. So in the beginning, we had PGP. We heard a great talk about PGP earlier. PGP, as he said, was one of the first sort of, I don't know, human-ready PGP for non-think tanks, governments, and all that kind of stuff. It was really incredible when that first came out. GPG eventually kind of took over as the open standard for Linux and a lot of home users and that kind of stuff. As Bankim had said, there were circles of trust where you were basically, you'd create a key, other people would say, oh, well, we trust that this is actually his key. That added signing parties and all these things where you'd get together, you'd validate one another, there'd be whole signature chains and all that good stuff. As well, there's public key servers. MIT has one of the most popular and oldest. The idea there is that you can upload your key online, your public key. Other people can then sign it. They can generally validate you, all that good stuff. I'd also say this was somewhat the dark ages, just because of the complexity. And I know you said it was super simple, but who remembers doing PGP or still does PGP? And it is not simple. It's obnoxious. Key management's a pain in the butt, multiple devices. Just trying to figure the whole thing out stunk. So Keybase. Keybase was this great little thing that popped up a few years ago and kind of swept through a lot of the technology and computer security circles I'm in. Everybody jumped on it. It was really neat, and the whole idea is kind of a modernized PGP that's simplified. It's a website that acts as a key directory as well as social identity, and this is kind of the big difference. With PGP, you would have a key that other people who were trusted would sign your key. Their circle of trust would effectively give trust to you actually being the person you claim you are. I've gone to key signing parties before, and it's obnoxious, and the whole chain is generally not user-friendly. With Keybase, it's a social identity. So many people have Twitter, many people have a GitHub, many people have websites, domain names. You build a social identity by effectively publishing a statement that says, I am this Twitter account. Keybase then indexes that and validates it through PGP by saying that really was you because it was signed with your private key. You then can add that on to things like domain names. You can add that on to devices, laptops, cell phones, anything that has some kind of Keybase application or client support. So now, instead of me having to go and verify you in person or your chain of trust through friends of friends, I can just look at your profile, see the other accounts, and go, oh, I definitely know that is their Twitter because I've interacted with them on Twitter and I know for sure that's them. So what else does Keybase offer? Initially, it was mostly just the website with social identity. It was a brilliant idea, and none of us used it because it didn't really do much. However, now it's expanded, and there are encrypted chat, which we don't have enough of those, so they decided to build another one. The team collaboration is actually pretty neat. You can now build a team and share within that team privately. Two of my favorite things is the encrypted Git repository, where you can basically post to a public repository, but the whole thing is encrypted. Within the command line, it still acts like a Git repository, and Git doesn't know the difference. The other one is the file sharing and encrypted file system, Keybase FS. This is really amazing, and it's very simple to use. So demo, we pray to the demo gods, please don't screw this up, da da da. Okay, so this is what the website looks like. Very quickly, you can see, actually here, let me show this to you, not from me logged in, so you don't see all the things I haven't submitted. You can see I've verified I am Mobhead on Twitter, I am Mobhead on GitHub, I own mobhead.com. I have a Bitcoin address, feel free to send me free Bitcoins. My key's up there, and I got a bunch of devices. So you can look at the devices, and you can see I've got a paper wallet, mobile, computer, a couple things like that. So this, again, is pretty nice because if you look at some of the people that I follow or follow me, you see similar things of what devices, who they are, who they claim to be. Since I don't have time demo-wise to really show you the back-end proofs, you're basically posting a message online to Twitter or other places publicly that then is signed by you. And then the other thing, lickety split. There's a command line client, which allows you to basically look people up. If you do the whole Keybase file system, this is basically using Fuse, which is a way to bridge a file system over things like SSH and all sorts of other good stuff. But what's kind of neat in here is that I can do things like public, and apparently I didn't preload. So there's public and private. If I go into private, I can just type at your username, and it immediately shares data to you. No key exchange, no nothing. It just says, you are validated, I am validated, and just because I know your username, it immediately sends you data encrypted. So nice and rushed. Finishing up with a minute. You got to have quotes in your slide, so can anyone tell me what the quote is that this is a quote of? Yes, I drank what is the correct answer. Way to go. That is from Real Genius. Go see that movie if you haven't. And there you go. Thanks. AHA's awesome logo.
All right, everybody. Thank you for attending the 2018 OWASP Austin Crypto Party. Hope you guys join us next month.